Hello and welcome to the Election Corner on One Man Think Tank. Today we'll be discussing what the election map would look like if the US had a three-party system a la Canada, with a conservative Republican Party, a moderate liberal Democratic Party, and a social progressive party. Now I've named them as typical American style of the Republicans, Democrats, and progressives. So what looks different in this scenario? Well, namely, the Democrats are noticeably more moderate. The progressives take on the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, adopting many policies of Senator Bernie Sanders, with the most extreme wing being a very socialist approach. Not national socialist, socialist approach with nationalizations, universal programs, and quite a bit of public ownership. This party would actively propose things ranging from student loan forgiveness to abolishing private education entirely. The Democrats, on the other hand, because they've lost their progressive wing, would moderate out some. They would allow in, for example, anti-abortion voices into the party, probably go more mild on gun control, support background checks but not gun confiscations. On healthcare, they'd support a public option but never dream of something like Medicare for all. Actually, healthcare is a very good analogy. Republicans would be only for a private marketplace, Democrats would range between Obamacare and a public option, while progressives would range between Medicare for all and a complete national healthcare system where the entirety of the healthcare sector has been nationalized. So, going into this, I'm also not going to put any, leans, tilts, or anything. I'll just say which party is most likely to win the state. So, let's go west to east. Starting on the west coast, we have some good news for the progressives. They would take all three of the west coast states, Washington, Oregon, and California. This is because all three of these states have a historically progressive bend, being leaders on LGBTQ rights, the climate, being more towards universal programs, with California nearly passing a universal health care program less than 4 years ago, and the like. This means they will most likely end up voting for progressives. Oh, one last thing. This would happen under a ranked choice voting system, eliminating the spoiler effect. And we'll analyze what the meaning of the final map is once we've done it all. So these three states would go in and give the progressives a solid chunk of votes, 47 to be exact. However, you start to see how this map is going to unfold when you look at the outer lying western states, Alaska and Hawaii, which both go Democrat. These states, in their policies, are more moderate, not big fans of federal intervention and kind of do-it-yourself states, wanting to have their own business be their business. This continues into Nevada, which is a liberal state but not a progressive state. They like the idea of Medicare for all, but they're not, Medicare, but a public option, but they're not supporting Medicare for all. They like the idea of LGBTQ rights, but they're probably not going to go out of their way to say workplace protections for these individuals is the top priority, though they would still grant them. Continuing on into the southwest, Arizona and Utah go for the Democrats. Moderate, more purplish states that, in this scenario where the Democrats have moved a tad rightward, pulling back on guns and abortion, while still being a very pro-LGBTQ, supporting the Latino population, they would win. To give you an idea, in this scenario, what we would typically think of as the more quote-unquote liberal wing of the Republican Party, so your Mitt Romneys and John Kasich's, would go to the Democrats. They would be considered Democrats in this scenario. Colorado and New Mexico, however, would be progressive, two states that have historically been very forward-thinking on topics such as marijuana, prison reform, and the like. Up in the Great Plains, Republicans finally get some seats on the board, with Idaho, North Dakota, Wyoming, South Carolina, and the majority of Nebraska's states. However, Democrats have a long-standing history of winning the Omaha area, and Montana at this point. This is due to one key fact. They are, at the end of the day, states that really want to vote for the Democrats if they weren't so pro-gun control and federal intervention. Kansas would also fall under this bucket, though Kansas seems to be heading in that direction on its own. Oklahoma would vote Republican, being a naturally conservative state, but Texas, which has been on a knife's edge between Democrats and Republicans for years, with the losing of the progressive wing and the heavily encouraged adoption of white suburbanites, would finally flip to the Democrats. Going on to the Midwest Great Lakes area, we start to see the Democrats really begin to develop a lead, taking Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Montana, while progressives gain Minnesota. Missouri and Indiana will go to the Republicans. This really shows the dynamic. Many people think of Illinois as a very progressive state if you're not from there. With the Chicagoland area, because the state always goes blue. However, the Chicagoland area, parts of it are very progressive, but most of the rest of the state is liberal Republican to conservative Democrat, which results in the Democrats getting the final victory in the state because progressives just can't get the votes, forcing them to choose the next best thing. And we'll get to that phenomenon in a moment. Down in the Deep South, we also get to see the Republicans recover a bit, getting Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, and South Carolina. Very conservative states in their makeup and voting policies. However, Mississippi, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, and Kentucky all go to the Democrats. These states have historically had blue trends in them, and with the moderation of the Democrats, go to the Democratic Party. Now, it's important to note, if the current Democratic Party were to moderate, that wouldn't win them these states. This map would not happen, and I'll explain why in a few moments. D.C. would go to progressives, being the only city-state in America, while the rest of the Rust Belt area would go hardcore to the Democratic Party. These are states that are historically in Democrat constituencies, that have typically voted Republican for social reasons rather than economic ones. But those social reasons, or cultural reasons, are typically things related to, well, for lack of a better term, guns and welfare. Progressives get New Jersey, but they do not win New York State. This is because while the city of New York is very progressive, the upper state is Rockefeller Republican and more moderate center-left to center Democrats, which is what's needed to win the whole state. So progressives would most likely have the monopoly on representatives from New York City, but Democrats would hold the state at the statewide level. Democrats also hold the very affluent suburbs of Connecticut and Rhode Island, as well as New Hampshire, but the Vermont and Massachusetts go to progressives. Vermont is the only state in the country which actually has a three-party system, and looks likely it may elect a progressive governor in 2020. However, this we'll have to see. Things are very early out. But there's a strong progressive movement in the state, which, if the Democrats were to moderate, could see a massive swing, as well as the benefit of national funding. And lastly, we have Maine, where all the districts in Maine at all will go to the Democrats. So, as you can see, this map gives it far and away to the Democratic Party, winning by as much as nearly Barack Obama did in 2008 and even 2012, with progressives coming in second, holding a strong minority, and Republicans at a pitiful 88, compared to what was once a party that could win a national election with little issue, much like how the Democrats can currently win with little issue. The right candidate, with plenty of backing, could win plenty of swing states. And here is the real matter of it. The political spectrum has been realigned in exchange for creating a party where all left-wingers can go to vote and do well on their conscience. So everyone who's currently saying, well, I'll go vote Green, votes Progressive, and then can vote Democrats. Well, Republicans, who previously would never vote for the Democrats, or demon rats as some of the more extreme ones will call it, now have the polar opposite of progressives. The Democrats are the compromise party, as opposed to being the left-wing party. Progressives will always default to the Democrats in a ranked choice voting system as their second choice, to avoid Republicans winning. Republicans will default to Democrats to avoid progressives winning. Now, in a ranked choice voting scenario, there would most likely probably be a more conservative party than the Republicans, or maybe Republicans splitting much like the Democrats have here between liberal Democrats and social Democrats. But you have a fascinating dichotomy. In exchange for letting progressives take what are classically Democratic strongholds, Democrats are able to win back states they've had trouble holding on to before. So, a Mississippi where Republicans or conservatives who might be registered Democrat would feel more comfortable voting Democrat on the second round of the ticket, and progressives would feel more comfortable voting Democrat on the second round of the ticket, giving the Democrats a boost. Meaning, as long as the Democrats in all of these states come in second on the first ballot, they will definitely win on the second. And that is the big message. Ironically enough, the best plan for the Democratic Party is to loose their progressive side into a new party, enable ranked choice voting, and all of a sudden you're going to end up with the Democrats gaining a bunch of votes from Republicans. Because the party of more moderate candidates will end up sapping from more, I'll loosely term them, liberal or Rockefeller Republicans. People who vote Republican but don't want to vote Democrat because voting Democrat means you're voting for all those progressive policies. And there are progressives who don't vote Democrat because there are a lot of conservatives in the Democratic Party, or Joe Manchins are, to use a good example. And as such, the Democrats become an ironically perfect middle ground for them to meet at. A party both of them can hate, but both begrudgingly agree, are better than the other guy. With that being said, if you like the video, please leave a like down below. Also, feel free to drop a comment or a question or your own opinion. If you want to see more from this channel, click the subscribe button and the notification bell in order to be alerted when new content is released. Otherwise, as always, have a wonderful day.